indicate, indicate, indicate. So, let's talk about the word indicate. As a verb, it means to show or suggest something by some sign, action, or fact. In common usage, people use indicate in everyday conversations to convey that something is likely to happen, be true, or exist, but isn't actually certain. For example, you might say, "The weather forecast indicates that it will rain tomorrow," meaning the weather report suggests it's going to rain, but we're not 100% sure yet. One special note about indicate is that it can sometimes get confused with similar words like show or point. While those words also mean to point out something, indicate implies a bit more of an inference or suggestion, rather than just directly pointing out the obvious. Here are 3 practical example sentences using the word indicate, along with their respective contexts. In a formal setting, such as a court of law or a government report, you might say, "The presence of fingerprints on the glass window at the scene of the crime indicates that the perpetrator was in a state of panic and didn't have time to clean up after themselves." This usage is more formal because it's used in a professional or official capacity. In casual conversation with friends, you might say something like, "I'm feeling really tired today," which kind of indicates I didn't get enough sleep last night, right? This usage is more casual because it's used to discuss everyday topics and emotions with people you know well. The tone is relaxed and conversational, and the language is straightforward. In a business or academic setting, you might say, "The results of our survey indicate a strong correlation between social media use and decreased productivity among employees." This usage is more formal because it's used in a professional context to present data or findings, and the tone is objective and analytical. The sentence is written in a clear and concise manner, with technical terms like results and correlation, which are typical of academic or business writing. So, you want to know about a certain word that helps us show something is true or likely based on signs or evidence? Okay, let me explain. When we use this concept, we're basically pointing out subtle hints that suggest something might be happening or is probably true. For example, if someone says, "I'm feeling tired today," and then they yawn a lot during the conversation, it's not a direct proof of their fatigue, but it gives us a pretty good idea that they might indeed be exhausted. The main characteristics of this concept are that it shows something likely or probably true based on subtle signs or evidence. It's similar to words like suggest or imply, and in many languages, it can also be translated as to hint at or to give a sign of. When we use this concept, we're essentially making an educated guess about something that might be happening or is probably true based on what we see or hear. Individual, individual, individual. So, let's talk about the word individual. The part of speech is a noun, specifically a singular countable noun, which means it can be used to refer to one person, thing, or group. In common usage, we use individual to describe a person who thinks and acts independently, making their own decisions and choices. We might say something like, "Every individual has the right to freedom of speech." It's also commonly used in formal situations, such as in education, government, or business, where we need to refer to people or things on an equal basis. For example, the university values the contributions of each individual student. One special note about its usage is that individual can sometimes sound a bit too formal or even clinical. So it's not always the best choice for everyday conversation. In those cases, we might prefer more casual words like person, personality, or someone. In a job interview, if you're asked to describe your teaching philosophy, you might say, as an individual educator, I believe it's essential to create a safe and inclusive learning environment that caters to each student's unique needs. This is a formal usage of the word individual, where it emphasizes personal characteristics or qualities. In a casual conversation with friends, someone might say, I think we make a great team, we're like two peas in a pod as individuals, but together we can accomplish anything. Here, the word individual is used informally to refer to each person's unique personality or contribution to a group effort. The tone is relaxed and conversational. In a business context, an employee might be asked to discuss their performance as an individual contributor within the company, where they're being evaluated on their ability to work independently and meet project goals. In this instance, individual refers to each person's professional identity and contribution to the organization, and is used in a more technical or analytical way. So you're trying to learn about this concept called individual. Okay, let me break it down for you. An individual is basically just a person on their own. We're talking one unique human being with their own thoughts, feelings, and experiences. This means they have their own personality, opinions, and way of looking at the world, which makes them stand out from others. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Isn't this just like everyone? Not exactly. While it's true that people share many similarities, an individual is someone who has a distinct identity and can make choices based on their own values and beliefs. In everyday life, when we talk about individuals, we're usually referring to how they interact with others, whether it's in a social situation or in a professional setting, like how they respond to challenges, form relationships, or take initiative. Make sense? Interpretation. 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 So, let's talk about the word interpretation. As a noun, it refers to the act of explaining or giving meaning to something, such as a text, a statement, or even a work of art. In common usage, interpretation is often used in contexts like literature, music, and politics, where people need to understand and make sense of complex ideas or messages. For example, the artist's interpretation of the painting was quite different from what I expected. Or, the politician's speech required careful interpretation to grasp its true meaning. It's worth noting that interpretation can also imply a certain degree of subjectivity or personal perspective. So it's not always possible to arrive at an objective or definitive understanding. In a formal lecture setting, Professor Thompson said, "The multiple interpretations of Shakespeare's Hamlet have been a subject of debate among literary scholars for centuries, with some arguing that the prince's actions are a symbol of rebellion against oppressive authority, while others see him as a tragic figure driven by guilt and madness." This usage highlights the word interpretation in a context where nuance and precision are important. In a casual conversation between friends, Emily mentioned to her friend Mike, "I loved the artist's interpretation of what it means to be homeless, it really struck a chord with me." Here, the word interpretation is used in a more relaxed setting to describe a personal perspective or understanding of an artwork. The tone is informal and conversational. In a business meeting, the project manager, Rachel, discussed the marketing team's interpretation of the company's mission statement and how it aligned with their proposed campaign strategy. This usage demonstrates the word interpretation in a professional context where clarity and concision are crucial for effective communication. So you want to know about interpretation. Think of it like this. When we're dealing with words, ideas, or even actions that have more than one possible meaning or way of understanding them, interpretation is the process of figuring out which one makes the most sense. Main characteristics? Well, it's often a matter of looking at the context, who said or did something, where and when, and what was going on around them. It's also about considering different perspectives and trying to understand why someone might think or feel a certain way. Similar concepts are like translation or analysis. But interpretation is more about understanding the meaning behind something rather than just changing words from one language to another or breaking it down into smaller parts. As for how it's used, well, think of all the times you've had to make sense of someone else's words or actions, whether it's a friend explaining why they did something weird, a teacher helping you understand a tricky concept in school, or even just trying to figure out what your favorite TV show is really about. That's basically interpretation at work.